This is Henares making your day with part one of a book I wrote on the destiny of the Filipino people. Chapter, Past and Present History. My dear friends, in the Rift Valley, Central Africa, 2.5 million years ago, an upheaval caused the rise of high mountain ranges that split the land in two areas. One a lush forest and the other a grassland. The apes in the forest remained in the trees. The apes in the grasslands learned to stand up and walk erect, and eventually evolved into humanoids. This, according to scientists, is the true birthplace of the human race, possibly in the area of the Aldavai Gorge in Tanzania. Evolution takes a long time, long time. Scientists found, based on snippets of DNA called mitochondria, that all human beings alive today can claim as a common ancestor. A 3-foot woman who lived in Central Africa 150,000 years ago, dubbed inevitably the real Eve. Only 80,000 years ago, her tribe of some 10,000 started its great migration to the rest of the world. The final stage of the human odyssey was 20,000 to 25,000 years ago, when a group of seafaring humans moved through Malaysia and Indonesia throughout the Pacific Ocean and landed, among other places, in the Philippine archipelago. In time, they became part of the Sri Visayan and Majapahit Empire, and eventually were colonized by the Spaniards and the Americans. The history of Western imperialism is familiar to all Filipinos and the rest of the colored races of this earth. One observation stresses one difference that sets us apart from the others. Unlike the British, the French, and the Dutch, who exploited their colonies and eventually left them exactly as they found them, without basic changes to their cultures and religion, the Spaniards and the Americans remade the Filipinos into imitations of themselves. The Spaniards indoctrinating us into the Roman Catholic Church, the Americans giving us universal education, public sanitation, and their version of democratic governance. For good or ill, we were thus ushered into independence as a nation. More about this after these messages. This is Henares making your day with part one of a book I wrote on the destiny of the Filipino people. Chapter, Past and Present History, and we continue to quote. We Filipinos are the most unique in the world. While other Asians were fighting under kings, emperors, and sultans, we were the first one to fight for ourselves, the first to think of ourselves as a nation, and a free people who must unite to promote and defend our interests against the interests of other nations. We were the first Asian nationalists, the first to execute a nationalist revolution, 1898, antedating the Chinese Double 10 in 1911 by 13 years, and the first to set up a democratic republic in all of Asia in 1898, as well as in 1946. We were the first in Asia to break the shackles of Western colonialism, fighting two of the greatest colonial powers, Spain and the United States, one after the other, beating Spain and inflicting on the United States 7 times more casualties than it suffered in the Spanish-American War. We have the highest literacy rate, 88% of it, in all of Asia, aside from Japan, which has a literacy rate 99%. Even higher than that of the United States, 98%. But the Japanese are literate in Japanese, which no one else understands. We are literate in English, the lingua franca of the world. The Americans were not smart enough to learn our language, so they forced us to learn theirs, and became the second largest English-speaking nation in the world, where English has become the universal language. Estimated in 2012, the first being the United States, with its 313,775,002 population. The second being the Philippines, with its 103,847,465 population. And the third being Great Britain, with only 63,047,161 population. So we have more English-speaking peoples than Australia, Canada, Singapore, Hong Kong, and Malaysia combined. We are the only Christian nation in Asia, the only Asian society without traditional class barriers to surmount. Yet, with all the historical advantages we enjoyed, we find ourselves a basket case among the developing nations of the world. Once we were 20 years ahead of South Korea, while it was engaged in civil war, ahead of Taiwan, while it was the backwater refuge of the defeated Kuomintang forces, and certainly ahead of China, while it was undergoing its communist revolution. Today, we are 30 years behind them in economic development, grappling with an economy that depends on the export of cheap labor and cheap raw materials, while we cannot even produce enough rice and food to feed ourselves. We are the largest importer of rice. Now, we will not dwell on the reasons for this. Enough to say it is our lack of nationalism and our incurable colonial mentality that allowed Americans to decide that our role in their anti-communist McCarthyist world is to serve as vegetable garden to developing nations of the world. More tomorrow, my dear friends. This is Lara Henares, making your day, saying good day, God bless you. Thank you very much for being with us till next time. Hasta la bye-bye.